I discovered my boyfriend has been secretly paying his ex's entire rent for 2 years. My name is Rachel Carter, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person to spill my private life to strangers online. But after what happened in Austin, Texas, I realized my story isn't just mine, it's a warning. Last month, the person I trusted most, my boyfriend of 5 years, Jason, betrayed me in a way that made me question every single moment of our relationship. I found out he had been secretly paying his ex-girlfriend's entire rent for 2 years straight. Not as help during a hard time, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because he wanted to keep her comfortable in case she ever needed him again. And how it all came crashing down, well, it wasn't just personal, it was public. Life. What Jason felt solid. We weren't the type to post every moment online. But we had our rituals: Saturday farmers markets, Sunday meal preps. Weekday evenings spent curled on the couch with our dog between us. He was dependable, texting me every morning, picking me up from work when it rained, always remembering the little details I mentioned. I handled most of our day-to-day budgeting, but he always contributed without question, transferring his share of rent and bills on time. We'd been together for 4 years, and I'd never once had a reason to suspect him of being dishonest. Our arguments were small, about laundry or whose turn it was to walk the dog, not about trust. Financially, we were saving toward a down payment, and emotionally, we were aligned, or so I thought. In my mind, we were a team, building a future brick by brick. What I didn't realize was that part of our shared life was quietly siphoning away to someone else's benefit, a woman from his past who was living rent-free thanks to the man I thought I was building my forever with. The first crack in the picture perfect surface came on a Tuesday night. Jason was in the shower and his phone buzzed on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice, but the name flashing on the screen stopped me cold. Samantha. It wasn't a text, just a payment notification from a money transfer app. I told myself it was probably nothing, maybe he owed her for some ancient bill, or it was a one-off favor. Still, something about the casualness of it nagged at me that month. I noticed he seemed tighter with money. He'd suggest cheaper date nights, or he'd suddenly forget to move his share into our joint account until I reminded him. Then there was a day we walked past an apartment complex downtown, and he looked away quickly. Nice building, I'd said, but he changed the subject instantly. My gut started whispering, but I pushed it down. After all, this was Jason, the man who made me coffee every morning and kissed me goodbye without fail. It felt wrong to even imagine he was hiding something. But deep down, I knew. I just didn't know how deep the lie went. It happened on a Tuesday night. Jason was in the shower, and his laptop sat open on the coffee table, the screen glowing. I wasn't hunting for trouble, but when I noticed a folder labeled receipts, my curiosity pulled me in. The first PDF I opened stopped my breath cold: a monthly Venmo receipt for $1,195. Sent to Samantha H. My stomach lurched. I clicked again. Another payment, same amount, same recipient, same two words in the note: for rent. I scrolled further. Month after month, year after year, 2 years worth of transfers totaling nearly $30,000 flowing quietly from our life into hers. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a what I'm favor. This was a deliberate, sustained commitment to keeping his ex comfortably housed in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. My hands were shaking so badly I had to steady them against the coffee table. I thought of every time I clipped coupons, skipped little luxuries, and put away extra cash so we could grow our savings. Every time he sighed about tight months or said we couldn't afford a trip. He wasn't broke, he was paying for 2 lives. The next day, I printed every receipt at work, sliding them into a manila folder that felt like it could detonate at any moment. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I became a quiet observer, studying the man I thought I knew. Every laugh we shared, every hand squeeze, every kiss before bed, I replayed them in my head with a new question. Had he just texted her? Every time he claimed to be low on cash, I knew exactly why. And in that silence, my trust was already gone. Jason's birthday was approaching, and we were hosting a dinner at our apartment. Friends, family, co-workers, the whole mix. That's when the plan formed. If I was going to confront him, it wouldn't be in the quiet corner of our living room where he could spin excuses. It would be in front of everyone who had built this image of him as a reliable, loyal partner. I spent the week preparing. I printed every receipt, lined them up in chronological order, and bound them with a deep red ribbon like a twisted scrapbook. Then I tucked the bundle into a sleek black gift bag, layered with tissue paper. The night of the party, laughter filled the room. Wine glasses clinked. and Jason sat at the head of the table. I stood to give a toast, smiling sweetly. "Here's to Jason," I began, "who has always been so generous in supporting the women in his life." A ripple of chuckles passed through the room. Then I handed him the bag. He pulled out the ribbon-bound stack, still smiling until his eyes caught the first page. His expression drained of color. The air shifted. His mother leaned forward. "What's that, Jason?" I kept my voice clear and loud enough for the whole table. "Just proof that Jason has been paying his ex's rent for the last 2 years. Over $25,000 without telling me." The gasp that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. He stammered something about helping a friend, but the dates, amounts, and 2 years of consistency told the truth louder than he ever could. In that moment, I didn't just want him uncomfortable. I wanted him dismantled right there, at his own celebration. After the party, Jason trailed me outside, his voice tight, frantic. He swore Samantha had been going through a tough time and that he didn't tell me, because I'd take it the wrong way. I actually laughed because what exactly is the right way to take 2 years of secret payments to your ex? He tried to spin it into some noble act of compassion. But compassion doesn't come with locked folders and hidden transactions. Over the next few days, our social circle erupted. Some friends called to offer support. Others texted that they couldn't believe I would humiliate him like that. But here's the truth, he humiliated himself. I just made sure the curtain was pulled back so everyone could see the show. The problem wasn't just the betrayal. It was the daily intimacy we shared while he knew exactly what he was hiding. Every time I looked at him after that night, I saw a highlight reel of every I can't afford it moment, every postponed plan, every sacrifice I made while he funneled money to someone else's life. Within a week, I packed up my clothes, the dog's things, and left. I moved in with a friend who didn't ask for the sugar-coated version. I wasn't interested in letting him frame this as a mutual decision or a clean, polite ending. Jason had built a narrative where he was a stable, dependable one, and I had torn it apart in front of the people who believed it. Now, he'd have to live with the wreckage of his own making. With no quiet way to bury a dog, my revenge wasn't impulsive, it was engineered. I knew that if I confronted Jason in private, he'd go into damage control mode, deny, cry, or spin the situation until I was somehow the unreasonable one. But humiliation in public, that's a truth no amount of spin can erase. I wanted the people he valued, the ones who saw him as dependable, generous to witness exactly what he'd been doing behind closed doors. I spent hours assembling my arsenal. The Venmo receipts were the foundation. But I went further, screenshots of texts where he told Samantha, "I'll always take care of you," as if our relationship was just a side project to his real commitment. I printed them neatly, bound them like a report, and slipped them into a glossy gift bag. Timing was everything. His birthday dinner meant he'd be surrounded by friends, family, and co-workers, the exact audience whose opinions he guarded like treasure. My plan wasn't about theatrics or shouting. It was about composure. I wanted to smile while I dismantled him. The genius of it was that I didn't have to exaggerate or fabricate. The raw truth was more destructive than any insult I could deliver. My tone during the toast was light, almost celebratory, which made the pivot to the reveal all the more devastating. Revenge, for me, wasn't about inflicting pain for its own sake. It was about reclaiming my dignity, taking back the narrative before he could rewrite it. I wanted to leave him standing in the wreckage of his own choices, unable to pretend they were anything but deliberate. And on that night, in front of his carefully curated audience, I did exactly that. The night of the party, the air was warm with the scent of roasted garlic and birthday cake. Glasses clinked, laughter rolled through the room, and Jason was in his element, leaning back, charming the crowd like he'd been born to host. I watched him, almost impressed by how easily he wore his mask when dessert was served. I stood and tapped my glass. The chatter softened to a hum. "I just want to take a moment to appreciate Jason," I said, smiling. "He's always been incredibly generous, especially with the women in his life, past and present." A few polite chuckles circled the table, the kind that assumed I was teasing. I handed him the gift bag. He pulled out the tissue paper, still grinning, until the first bound packet slid into view. His brow furrowed. He flipped a page, then another. The smile faltered. His eyes flicked to mine, searching for some kind of joke. I gave him nothing. The color drained from his face. "What is this?" he asked quietly. But I raised my voice just enough for the table to hear. "It's every payment you've made to your ex for her rent. 2 years worth, over $25,000. Gasps hit like a wave. His sister covered her mouth. His best friend froze mid-bite. Jason's lips parted, fumbling for words. It's not, he started, but I cut in. If you wanted to play landlord, you should have signed up for Zillow. The silence that followed was electric, heavy enough to bend the air. No one reached for their forks. No one spoke. I took a slow sip of wine, slid back into my chair, and let the truth settle into every corner of the room like smoke. Jason sat there, exposed, with no way out. Jason's first reaction was pure denial. He claimed the payments were loans. He fully expected to be repaid, but the screenshots I tucked into the stack made it obvious there was never an intention for payback. When denial crumbled, he pivoted to guilt, accusing me of humiliating him in front of the people who mattered most to him. I told him he'd been humiliating me for 2 years in front of someone who used to matter to him. After the party, he went into frantic damage control, texting friends to clarify his side. But it was too late. The receipts were real, the math was solid, and the text spoke louder than his excuses. Word traveled fast. I heard Samantha moved out of her apartment soon after, insisting she didn't want to be caught in the middle. Jason eventually stopped trying to reach me when I refused to reply. The last update I got was that his reputation had tanked. Turns out, betrayal is bad, but betrayal with a paper trail is unforgettable. In the weeks that followed, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: relief. The low, constant hum of doubt that had lived in the back of my mind was finally gone. Friends reached out, not with pity, but with respect for how I'd handled it. Jason, from what I heard, grew quieter. He moved into a smaller apartment, whether because of money or humiliation, I didn't bother to find out. Samantha slipped out of the city entirely. I closed our joint account, signed the lease on my own place, and threw myself back into my career. Every paycheck felt cleaner, knowing none of it was being siphoned off for someone else's rent. The sting of betrayal was still there, but the truth was my closure. I didn't want an apology. Apologies are just words. What I needed was for the truth to be undeniable, and that box was checked the night of the party. More than anything, I walked away with sharper boundaries. Transparency, I learned, isn't some relationship perk. It's the bare minimum. Without it, you're not in love, you're just coexisting with a stranger in a well-polished disguise. Looking back, the deepest wound wasn't the money, it was a quiet, daily decision to live a double life while letting me believe we were building something real. People think revenge is about inflicting equal pain. For me, it was about taking back the story, making sure the truth stood without room for edits. My silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. It gave me time to gather proof so that when the moment came, his own actions spoke louder than anything I could say. If there's a lesson here, it's this: betrayal survives in shadows. But the second you pull it into the light, it starts to rot. You don't always need to yell. Sometimes, the cleanest cut is the quietest. Jason might never admit his fault, but he'll always remember the night the mask shattered and the crowd saw exactly who stood behind it. And that's how my boyfriend's 2-year rent payments to his ex blew up in his face on his birthday. In front of everyone he wanted to impress. If you were in my shoes, would you have confronted him the second you found out, or waited for the perfect public moment to drop the truth? Do you believe silence can cut deeper than shouting? I do. Betrayal almost never starts with something huge. It's born of the small lies, the half answers, the details they conveniently skip by the time you see the whole picture. It's a masterpiece of deception. The real question is, when you recognize the brush strokes, will you act? Because sometimes the quietest checkmate is the one they don't see coming, until every piece has fallen and the game is already over.